how can we escape this repugnant conclusion, right? As the philosophers would say. How do we escape this conclusion? So let's think about a couple of escape routes. One escape route is that per capita capital accumulation dies out. It could happen, we don't know. It may be that there's not going to be any growth in the future. If there's no growth in the future, this argument fails. Okay, because then the labor share is going to settle down. And that may be a possible outcome of this model, because the model is presuming that there is ongoing growth. I want you to just keep that in your mind, think of it as you will. But of course, generally, the higher the bound on per capita capital, the lower is going to be the share of labor. Yeah. And my argument was just stated in a very strong way. That's all. The second is, man, you're telling me that every sector can be automated. Maybe some sectors can't be automated. Now, to some degree, this may be wishful thinking, right? I mean, yesterday I was at Bhaskara's house and we were all reading out poems written by AI systems. But in any case, it's possible, right? Handicrafts, by definition, may not be automatable, right? But of course, these fully protected sectors have to have a market demand for them. It's not just enough to say, oh, there are sectors where we can be poets and philosophers, but there has to be a market demand for poets and philosophers. Otherwise, that's not going to work, yeah? So, as I've written down, philosophers, poets, novelists, musicians, will market demand sustain those sectors? I hope so, right? And if they do, then we'll be fine, but I wouldn't bet on it, yeah? What about researchers? What about the guys who think about the new technologies? Maybe we'll all become researchers. Well, I wouldn't bet on that either, yeah, because of a very famous book by von Neumann, where he argues that what he calls the singularity, right? That there is a real possibility that robots, in the broad sense, can be produced by means of robots, right? And that singularity is not a happy singularity that we might want to go to, at least from the point of view of distribution, right? Maybe in terms of per capita, that's good. Yeah. So that's the second one. The third one is, well, maybe some sectors are not automated, but maybe there are no such thing as a fully protected sector, but it may be that there'll be constantly new sectors coming up, as if by divine ordination, right? We'll have new sectors which are progressively more and more friendly to humans. So as the human way changes, we are going to be able to move to those sectors over time. Maybe, maybe that could happen. It depends on the composition of demand as income changes. And Ashok had actually had something to say about this in his book, right? So here's a little quote from Ashok. Poor Ashok was not indulging in this sort of flight of fantasy, but he did think about what happens to capital intensity as we become richer and richer and look at the derived demand. So here's a quote. When we consider luxury goods like, he's writing this in 1994, luxury goods like refrigerators, washing machines, video recorders, and the like, it seems clear that these are highly capital intensive goods. This is certainly so in comparison with the industrial products that can be thought of as necessities like footwear, kitchenware, bicycles. It might appear that some luxury services like five-star hotels or airline services are very labor intensive, but they would not appear so if we take into account the enormous amounts of capital required to purchase the aircraft or build the hotels. So what is Ashok saying here? He's saying that there's a positive correlation between compositional changes and the reliance on capital. Well, if that's the case, then that's the opposite of this escape route, right? So if you believe Ashok, then he doesn't buy this route, right? But maybe that he's wrong, right? Maybe we'll all move towards things that protect humans over time. And finally, the fourth escape route, technical progress. Maybe technical progress will always be set up in a way that it benefits humans and not machines. Well, the fossil record is not very encouraging on that, right? Technical progress, of course, has benefited humans, but on the whole, technical progress has built more and more powerful machines. But it may be that that's a possibility.